biggest discipline I have when I'm painting is not to have any idea of what I'm going to paint till about the last 10, 15% of the painting. So it starts off very, very abstract, and I invent my images.
Iconic artist Peter Max. Today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. Close your eyes and imagine, well, don't close your eyes if you're driving, but close your eyes and imagine the 1960s. And in particular, imagine the art of the 1960s, all those rich colors, the psychedelic-inspired counterculture mix that you would find on posters and art and paintings and murals. Chances are what you just imagined was the work of artist Peter Max. Peter Max was born in 1937 in Germany. Now, if you know what was happening in the 1930s in Germany, you can understand why the following year his family moved from Germany first to China for several years, then to Israel, a brief stop in Paris, and finally wound up in New York City. Now, Peter Max opened his first art studio in New York City in 1962 when he was just 25. And as the 60s progressed, Peter Max's interest in both astronomy and the counterculture coalesced and helped enhance his whole reputation as the icon of the counterculture. In 1967, Peter Max designed the flyers for the Bee Inn at Central Park on Easter Sunday in 1967. That really cemented his reputation. By 1970, Peter Max had published his first book, a collection of his art up until then, but it was not long after that he kind of disappeared for a while. He went into a hiatus, and some people wondered if his career was over. Not so, because he came back several years later, roaring back with a lot more work, and by 2002, Peter Max had published a big collection, a retrospective of all his work. It was a big coffee table book called The Art of Peter Max. Now, that's when I had the chance to meet him. He was on a book tour promoting the book that fall. So I sat down for a few minutes with him, and what an incredible creative mind he had. You'll be sure and listen to at least the second half of this interview. He's going to describe exactly how he created his works of art. In just a moment, my conversation with Peter Max.
No, Sherman, this isn't the Wayback Machine, but it is a look back at an interview from the 30-year archive of national radio personality Bill Thompson. Enjoy.
So here now from 2002, Peter Max.
I have 17 archivists working for me. And it started off because from 1971 till 1989, I was in a creative retreat. I did nothing but draw and paint for 17 years, 7 days a week, and except for sleeping and eating, it's all I did is create artwork in a very big, broad range. And by 1995, 96, I thought to myself, I have it all so well packed away, but how do I find it? So I looked at these big metal drawers that go up and down. I looked at them and said, 71, 72, and 85, 86. I said, but what's in there? So I would look inside, and they were all perfectly packaged, little packets of drawings, so I couldn't even tell what was in there. So then these color Xerox machines were coming out, and they you know how today a great electronic photograph comes out, it looks like a real photo print, no pixels. Well, the machines were producing such beautiful reproduction, so I started buying one machine, another one. I've got about 10 of those going, and 17 archivists reproducing everything, and everything was put away by genre, by style, by year, by subject. So when Abrams went to do The Art of Peter Max, and they had an art director there, I said, my God, thank God for my archivist. So I asked for slide books, and I went with a loop and looked at about maybe 8,000 slides, a small portion of what I have. I would call out the names, the numbers of the pieces to one of my assistants. The next day, boards would be made up that were larger than this wall. This looks like about a 10 by 10 foot wall with little pieces of art pasted on it, size of postcards. And I would then pick the ones I liked or discard the ones. I've got 3 here, the same subject. Let's keep this. Let's get. So I narrowed it down from 10,000 to maybe 3,000, and then down to 2,000, and finally to 350. That's how many images are in the book.
Incredible.
So they're very well edited down.
I would guess so. Now, Charlie quotes you at one point in this book as saying many people thought you disappeared after 1971.
Well, I was always so much in the media, and for a guy who didn't even know what media meant, or what public relations meant, I had no idea what the word public relations meant. In 1964, when I first heard the word, I thought public relations was sort of, like a postal office window that you go and buy stamps. You go to the window and you complain. Oh, somebody slipped outside. I thought that's what public relations was, public relations. And I didn't realize that it was PR, and there's such thing as press. I never realized that people, agents who bring people on TV, I just thought they just appear there. So by the time I was 25 years old, I already had been on several Johnny Carson shows, on and Ed Sullivan did a 1-hour TV special.
That's right.
And on, and but then I became so busy with, I allowed my work to be reproduced commercially, even though I was a total fine artist. As you can see by the book, in the beginning of the book, you can see I was a total realist. Mm-hmm. I was a real academic painter. And of course, later on, and as of recently now, I've gone quite abstract. And this has usually been, the way for many artists over the history, from realism to being into great composition and abstraction. Mm-hmm. But by 1971, I had done so much work that was applied on products and objects. I wanted to get out and just paint again, get back to what brought me this enormous success, 8-page cover story in Life magazine, and 10 pages in Business Week, and on. And yet I missed more than anything else in the world to be back at the easel. So I told everybody that I'm going to take a 2.5 months retreat. And that 2.5 months retreat, became an 18-year retreat. And came back out by 1989 and opened a small studio with about 6 people, and we're back to 105. But I paint every day now. Last night I painted till 1 in the morning. I barely got enough sleep.
Oh, man. Now, how is it that I'm sitting here interviewing Peter Max the artist, not Peter Max the astrophysicist?
Well, Peter Max the astrophysicist is the one that lives within the artist, that was going to be the one. And I was in awe of amazing facts, factoids, stuff that just blew my mind. For instance, at the age of 11, I discovered the speed of light, and I just couldn't believe it. So I remember going to sleep every night, counting, adding together, because the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, traveling at that speed. So I figured, well, how many miles is that per minute? I don't think I ever made it to a minute. I couldn't add up so fast. I was 11, so I'd always fall asleep. Today I know that a light year is about 6.5 trillion miles. But what also fascinated me as the years went on was that, we live in this beautiful galaxy called the Milky Way. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize that our little sun is on, these little, what do you call these little fingers of the galaxy?
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. I know what you mean.
Spirals, little
exactly.
Pieces of the spiral. We live on a very, very unimportant spiral, not one of the very brighter ones. And we're not one of the brightest suns on it. But on that little spiral lives spirals around it. Orbits around it is this little speck of blue dust. And on it roams a species as of late that thinks of itself as very big and important.
Yes. It is easy now to see then in that context where your cosmic period came from.
Yeah.
And that's the period that most people know you best for, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was the one that gave me birth. The merging of my interest in art, and of course having grown up in China, mm-hmm. and learned colors from my Chinese ama, which was sort of my babysitter, and she was my best friend. I was 7 and she was, I think, 15, because they start work very young over there. So she took me to places, and I saw people paint with big Chinese brushes, and the colors were everywhere. And I was always going to be an astrophysicist. I was so amazed, even again, that in this Milky Way that we have about 200 to 300 billion suns in one little galaxy. And then what's even more amazing, that they think the universe is about 200 to 300 billion galaxies. And so that was so fascinating, that I'm living in this place, forgetting about this little place called Earth, but that I'm living in this universe, and how big and immense it was. So till I was about 18 years old, I was going to become an astrophysicist. And then one day, a friend of mine wanted to go to the Art Students League. His brother got him 2 sort of coupons for the summer. And he said, take a friend, and then the 2 of you can go for the summer. He said, Peter, you're the best artist in high school. Would you come with me? He was a good buddy of mine. So I went to my mom, and my mom used to be a fashion designer, so she loved the idea. She was nervous about me being an astrophysicist. Now my father was nervous about me being an artist. The only artists he ever saw in the streets of Europe were, street artists in Paris. You'd have to give them a coin, a quarter, as you walked by. They would be painting a church. So my father was out of his mind with fear that I would do this, but I made him proud.
After this short break, Peter Max talks about exactly how he creates his art.
AI is not just for 22-year-old coders. A lot of us older adults are drawing on our life experience to find unique and creative ways to use AI, at home or at work. Got an AI success story you'd like to share? Tap the link below to visit our YouTube channel, AI After 40, and let's keep learning together.
Now back to my 2002 conversation with Peter Max.
I wanted to ask about another concept that Charlie writes about that you believe in, the idea of synesthesia, of that you see something and it connects with what you hear at the same time, that you paint to music even. This I think a lot of us have experienced this, but we didn't know what name to put on it.
Yeah, I don't know what name to put on it, but when I paint, like last night, I painted from 8:30 till midnight, till about 1. And I painted 12 paintings. And the paintings were about, some of them were 16 by 20 and a couple were 20 by 24. The canvas goes up. I listen to music. It's a background sound. And I happen to be playing an album that's actually fairly new called Incubus, which I like. And I've been painting to him for a while, and then I see my paints. I have about 70 colors there, and I see my brush, and I say to myself, do I take the big brush or the little brush? Well, I may reach for the small brush, but I'm allowed to change my mind. As I reach for the little brush, I could pick up a bigger brush because I have made no agreements with anyone, and then I dip the color in the color yellow I want. But I can even say to myself, I've done yellow 5 minutes ago. Let me dip into some nice light blue. And let me put it in the upper right-hand corner, maybe down on the bottom. And for no rhyme or reason, color goes on the canvas. Now, once the blue is on the bottom right, it calls for maybe an orange in the bottom left, and then maybe some warm gray in the middle. And I kind of follow those intuitions. And the biggest discipline I have when I'm painting is not to have any idea of what I'm going to paint till about the last 15% of the painting. So it starts off very, very abstract, and I invent my images. And even back then in the 60s when I drew all the stars, I invented those too. The space, the world I created, it appeared in front of me, and I was sort of in awe of what I saw. I didn't think about it beforehand and say, gee, I'm going to create such of a world. The worlds appeared in front of me. And I did that for about, 3-4 years. And then I thought to myself, this urge, I want something else to occur. it called for like a style change. And then I thought, well, if I change my style, then nobody will know who I am. And that kept me from changing my style for maybe 3-4 months. And then one day I said, well, I'm just going to do it anyhow. Let me just see. And of course, from then on, for the last 17, 18, 20 years now, when a style wants to change, please, quickly, right now, it's okay. And so I let my paintings go any which way. And when you come to the gallery shows, which I have everywhere, around the country, I have about 35, 40 shows a year and several museum shows. All the paintings, except when I do something very specific, like symbolic to the liberty or flag, but most of the paintings are invented. They're just my inventions out of my mind. I invent landscapes, I invent flowers, still lifes. I never look at anything and paint it.
Is it all intuitive at this point, or do you have in your mind a color wheel that says, well, these two colors are complementary and this will achieve that particular technological effect? Or is it just all something that comes from somewhere that you're not even quite sure where it comes from?
Yeah, it's all, I meet the whole thing halfway. It's like having a conversation with you. You ask me a question, I answer it. I look at the canvas, it wants to be more red in the upper corner, please. I pick up more red, and then when I'm brushing it, I know when I've brushed enough, when not enough, and it's a wonderful play. I'm always completely free, like I've made no commitments. I haven't set myself up for any disappointments, and sometimes near the end of the painting, it's always a wonderful abstraction. And I say to myself, do I leave it like this? And sometimes I do, and sometimes I just give it something else. And so that is what I love to do. I love to do it all day long. And I draw a lot. I draw, maybe 30, 40 drawings a day, all the time.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You tell one story in the book about the creation of the Be-In poster in '67, and I had no idea where the lineage of that particular poster, but that was a great little story.
A friend I've just reunited with by the name of Kenny Green, he was sort of a redhead hippie with blue eyes. If I had to cast a cool yogi bro hippie into a movie, it would be Kenny Green. Always wearing the woolen caps and always had something holy to say and always quoting somebody great. And one day after, I brought the famous Swami to America, who we just lost, by the way, recently, Satchidananda. He passed away and went into what they call Mahatsamadhi. It's like the place where only great guru can go. And he said to me one day, called me up, he says, Peter, in about 6-7 days, it'll be summer solstice day or spring, one of those dates. Why don't we do something and maybe have a gathering in Central Park? And would you do a little poster for it? I said, sure. So that night, at the time, you couldn't do any typesetting on a computer. And to go and set out type, you have to go call a typesetter, you have to have a type book, then you got to go send a messenger. So I just opened up a nice magazine and I cut letters out that were quite large, where I had pretty much the alphabet more than once. And I cut out these letters and I wrote B-in Central Park, April so-and-so. And for, that's it. And I went to my printer, Shelley Stein, and who printed all my famous posters. And I said, Shelley, would you print me this a big poster? He said, Peter, why don't we print 12 on a sheet? And for 5,000 or 10,000 posters, you'll get 120,000 little ones, like handbills. I said, wow, that's a great idea. So we printed those. And then I drew a little map of Manhattan, which is like a French loaf of bread, a long, and I broke it down to uptown, downtown, east side, west side, about 8-10 locations. And I told Kenny Green, why don't you get some of the hippie buddies of ours, Yogi Bros, to hand them out at NYU, Columbia University on 57th Street. And this was about 3, 4, 5 days before that weekend, that Sunday. Well, a few days went by and I woke up late because I painted late on Saturday night, and my friend Freddie Klein calls me up and he goes, hey man, he says, are you coming down to the Be-In? I go, what, man? He goes, the Be-In, man, the one you did the poster for. And that's how the Be-In was born. And you know how many people were there? 450,000 people. Every every magician, every hippie. I don't know if you remember the movie
Hair.
And when he wakes up the next morning, and they were all, every genre of that particular personality in the 60s was there, and it was a big gathering. And of course, then they had the being in the West Coast later on. But that's how the Bean was born. Are you coming down to the Bean? I go, what's that, man?
Wow. I have so many more things I want to ask you. We could spend all afternoon here, but we're running out of time already. Is there anything else, though, that you wanted to add? Or?
I'll tell you how the book actually happened. Harry Abrams once came to my studio many years ago and wanted me to do a book in the mid-'70s. He said, you deserve to do a book. But Harry was known to be a pretty strong negotiator. I was a young artist. He says, well, you can give me, $10,000 for the printing. You have to buy a few thousand books, and I'll pay you a small royalty. And I was a little uptight about that. The offer wasn't big enough. And I always felt sorry that I didn't do the book because I was really always a very big Harry Abrams fan. And so in the back of my mind, I always regretted never having done the deal with Harry Abrams himself. So a few years later, these lovely people come from Harry Abrams to visit me. And they said, they'd like to do a book. And there were 7 people. And there was Margaret Kaplan, who was this wonderful, lovely editor-in-chief, and she introduced the people around the table. And I asked everybody, what do you do, what do you do? And the final person was this very elegant fellow. I said to him, what do you do? He says, I'm the new publisher of Harry Abrams. And Margaret said to him, why don't you tell Peter the story you told me earlier? He says, well, I became publisher 10 days ago, and my secretary brought me this huge pad, the kind you get at Staples, that you can hang on the side of a door, that big, and I put it on my publisher's desk. She put it on his desk for him to write notes because he just became the publisher. So he said 2 days later he walked in, he took a huge magic marker and he wrote on it, "Get Peter Max." And that's how the book happened.
Peter Max will be 88 next month. He now suffers, however, from advanced dementia. He lives in New York. Now you can get your copy of The Art of Peter Max by Peter Max by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also find my 1991 conversation with another iconic artist, Art Spiegelman.
I didn't realize it was going to be so shocking when I was working on it. It wasn't like I had a high concept. On the other hand, I realized that if I was outside of this and somebody was telling me, I just heard about this comic book, it's about the Holocaust and it uses animals to tell the story, I'd go, oh, geez, we've reached some new lows here,
And my 1988 conversation with the woman who was not only an artist herself, but also was Andy Warhol's muse, Ultraviolet.
Andy Warhol was painting the surface of things. Andy said, if you want to know all about me, look at the surface of my painting, and here I am. But actually, below that surface, hopefully, there is a content and there's depth.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can find us wherever you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, what does a failed presidential candidate have to say after he's lost that he should have said while he was still running? My 2000 interview with unsuccessful presidential candidate Bill Bradley.
America no longer has the luxury, if you want to call it that, of ignoring racial division because America is changing. The economic future of the children of white Americans will depend increasingly on the talents of non-white Americans.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.